When this secret recording was played in court, Michael Jackson's mother collapsed in tears. What Michael said while drugged 6 weeks before his death revealed his greatest dream, a dream that would break your heart and change everything you thought you knew about the King of Pop's final moments. If stories like this move you as much as they move me, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about Michael's hidden compassion. Now let's dive into this heartbreaking revelation. October 5th, 2011. The Los Angeles Superior Court was packed as prosecutors in Dr. Conrad Murray's involuntary manslaughter trial prepared to play a piece of evidence that nobody in that courtroom was prepared to hear. Katherine Jackson, Michael's 81-year-old mother, sat in the front row, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had no idea that she was about to hear her son's voice from beyond the grave, speaking words that would haunt her forever. The recording had been discovered by forensic computer expert Stephen Marks, buried deep in Dr. Murray's iPhone data files. Murray, Michael's personal physician, had secretly recorded their conversation on May 10th, 2009, exactly 6 weeks and 1 day before Michael Jackson would die in that same bedroom. As prosecutor David Walgren pressed play, a hush fell over the courtroom. Then, through the speakers came a voice that was barely recognizable as the King of Pop. It was slow, slurred, labored, the voice of a man clearly under the influence of powerful medication. But what Michael said next would shock everyone in that room into absolute silence. "I'm taking that money." Michael's voice struggled through the speakers, each word requiring enormous effort. "1 million children. Children's hospital, the biggest in the world. Michael Jackson's Children's Hospital." Katherine Jackson's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears as she heard her son, heavily drugged and barely coherent, still thinking about helping others, still dreaming about saving children. But Michael wasn't finished. What came next was even more heartbreaking. "Going to have a movie theater. Game room," he continued, his words slurring together, but his passion unmistakable. "Children are depressed. In those hospitals, no game room, no movie theater. They're sick because they're depressed. Their mind is depressing them. I want to give them that. I care about them. Them angels." The courtroom was completely silent except for the sound of Katherine Jackson quietly sobbing. Jermaine Jackson, sitting beside his mother, put his hand over his mouth in shock. Randy Jackson listened with a pained expression, hearing his brother pour out his heart while barely able to form words. But what Michael said next would haunt everyone who heard it for the rest of their lives. "I love them. I love them because I didn't have a childhood. I had no childhood. I feel their pain. I feel their hurt. I can deal with it." His voice was fading now, barely audible, but every word carried the weight of a lifetime of suffering. "Heal the world. We are the world. Will you be there, the lost children? These are the songs I've written because I hurt. You know I hurt. Those words. I hurt. You know I hurt." Katherine Jackson broke down completely. Through her tears, she was hearing her son confess to decades of pain. Pain that he had channeled into helping others. Pain that had driven him to write some of the most powerful songs about healing and love ever created. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. As Michael's voice continued, growing weaker but somehow more determined, he revealed the true scope of his dream. "Elvis didn't do it. Beatles didn't do it. We have to be phenomenal. When people leave this show, I want them to say, 'I've never seen nothing like this in my life. It's amazing. He's the greatest entertainer in the world.'" Even in his compromised state, even struggling to form words, Michael was thinking about excellence, about giving people an experience they'd never forget, but not for ego, not for fame, for something much deeper. "That will be remembered more than my performances," he whispered. "My performances will be up there helping my children and always be my dream." Did you catch that? Michael Jackson believed that his children's hospital would be remembered more than his performances, more than Thriller, more than the moonwalk, more than anything he'd ever done on stage. That's what mattered to him. Not the records, not the awards, not the fame. The children. But what Murray did with this recording would shock investigators even more. The question that haunted everyone was simple. Why was Michael's doctor secretly recording him in this vulnerable state? What was Murray planning to do with this evidence of his patient's condition? Michael's voice grew more emotional, more desperate as the recording continued. Don't have enough hope. No more hope. That's the next generation that's going to save our planet, starting in the United States, Europe, Prague. My babies, they walk around with no mother. They drop them off. They leave. The psychological degradation of that. They reach out to me. Please take me with you. He was talking about abandoned children, children in hospitals with no visitors, children who had been dropped off and forgotten by their families. Michael had seen them during his countless hospital visits around the world, and their pain had become his pain. The recording revealed something that would change how everyone understood Michael Jackson's final months. This wasn't just a drug-induced fantasy. Michael had been planning this hospital for years. Investigators later found detailed architectural drawings in his Holmby Hills mansion, blueprints for a children's hospital unlike anything the world had ever seen. The plans showed not just medical facilities, but entire floors dedicated to joy. Movie theaters where sick children could escape into other worlds. Game rooms where they could play and laugh and forget their pain, even if just for a moment. Art therapy centers where they could express their emotions through creativity. Music rooms where they could heal through sound, just as Michael had always done. But there was something else in those plans that broke everyone's heart. A special wing labeled the Lost Children Ward, dedicated specifically to children who had been abandoned by their families. Children who, like Michael himself, had been forgotten by the people who were supposed to love them most. The hospital was going to cost an estimated $100 million to build. Michael planned to fund it entirely from the proceeds of his This Is It concerts in London. 50 sold-out shows at the O2 Arena. Over 1 million tickets sold in hours. The money was going to be there. The dream was within reach. But as that recording continued to play in the courtroom, everyone realized they were listening to the last gasps of a dying dream. Michael's final words on the recording were barely audible. God help me. I hurt so much. But I have to help them. They need me. When the recording ended, the courtroom remained silent for several long moments. Katherine Jackson was openly weeping, dabbing at her eyes with tissues that her daughter Janet handed her. The Jackson family sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just heard. This was the Michael Jackson that the world never saw. Not the global superstar, not the king of pop, not the controversial figure from the tabloids. This was a man who, even at his lowest point, even when drugged beyond recognition, was still thinking about saving children. But the recording raised disturbing questions that would never be fully answered. If Dr. Murray knew Michael was in this condition 6 weeks before his death, why didn't he stop administering the powerful sedatives? Why did he continue to give Michael propofol, the drug he called his milk, the drug that would ultimately kill him? The prosecution argued that Murray was documenting Michael's deteriorating condition to protect himself legally. Others believed he was simply negligent, more concerned with his $150,000 per month salary than his patient's well-being. 5 days before Michael died, his manager Frank DeLeo left a voicemail for Dr. Murray that was also found on the doctor's phone. Would you please call me? I'm sure you're aware he had an episode last night. He's sick. I think you need to get a blood test on him. We've got to see what he's doing. An episode. DeLeo knew something was wrong. He was asking for a blood test. He was concerned, but no blood test was ever done. 4 days earlier, on June 21st, Michael had called nurse Sherilyn Lee, frantically begging for propofol. He told her he needed it to sleep, that his doctor said it was safe as long as someone monitored him. Lee had warned him, Michael, this is not a safe medicine. The last result of this is death. You might not wake up. Michael had dismissed her concerns. My doctor said it's safe. That same day, Lee received a call from one of Michael's aides. Michael was feeling ill. One side of his body was hot, the other cold. Lee knew immediately that something had affected his central nervous system. She told them to take him to the hospital immediately. They didn't. June 24th, 2009. Michael Jackson arrived at the Staples Center for his final rehearsal. It was around 6:30 in the evening. Despite everything happening behind the scenes, Michael seemed to have found some energy. The rehearsal went past midnight, and video footage from that night shows Michael performing "This Is It" with surprising passion and focus. He was hitting his marks. He was singing. He was giving direction to the crew. You'd never know that just hours earlier, he had been calling nurses, begging for the drug that would kill him. Michael returned home around 12:30 a.m. on June 25th. He went to his bedroom an hour later. According to Dr. Murray's later testimony, Michael called him around 1 a.m., complaining of being unable to sleep and feeling dehydrated. Murray came to Michael's bedroom and began administering various medications: lorazepam, midazolam, diazepam. Nothing worked. Michael's insomnia, which had plagued him for years, was getting worse as the pressure of the upcoming concerts mounted. Finally, according to Murray, at around 10:40 a.m., he gave Michael what he claimed was a small dose of propofol, 25 milligrams. He said Michael finally fell asleep. Murray claims he left the room to use the bathroom. When he returned, Michael wasn't breathing. He claims he started CPR immediately. He claims he called for security, but curiously, he didn't immediately call 911. Security called 911 at 12:21 p.m. By the time the ambulance arrived and took Michael to UCLA Medical Center, it was too late. Doctors tried for over an hour to revive him. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Jackson was pronounced dead. He was 50 years old. His children's hospital was never built. The This Is It concerts never happened. The money he planned to use for the hospital was never earned. The dream died with him. In November 2011, after a 6-week trial that captivated the world, Dr. Conrad Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The jury determined that Murray's gross negligence and reckless use of propofol directly caused Michael Jackson's death. The judge called Murray a disgrace to the medical profession and sentenced him to 4 years in prison. Murray served 2 years and was released in 2013. He never showed remorse for his role in Michael's death. In interviews after his release, he continued to blame Michael for his own demise, claiming the singer was addicted to propofol and would have found another way to get it. But that secret recording tells a different story. It shows a man who wasn't trying to get high or escape reality. It shows a man with chronic insomnia who desperately needed rest so he could complete his mission, to earn enough money to build the greatest children's hospital the world had ever seen. The plans for Michael Jackson's children's hospital were found in his bedroom after his death, along with notes in his handwriting about the specific features he wanted to include. There were detailed drawings of the movie theaters, complete with comfortable recliners, where children could watch films while receiving treatment. Sketches of game rooms with the latest technology, designed to help kids forget their pain through play. But the most heartbreaking discovery was a folder labeled "Letters from My Angels." Hundreds of letters from sick children around the world who had written to Michael over the years. Children with cancer, children with rare diseases, children who were alone and scared and found comfort in Michael's music. Finally, according to Murray, at around 10:40 a.m., he gave Michael what he claimed was a small dose of propofol, 25 milligrams. He said Michael finally fell asleep. Murray claims he left the room to use the bathroom. When he returned, Michael wasn't breathing. He claims he started CPR immediately. He claims he called for security, but curiously, he didn't immediately call 911. Security called 911 at 12:21 p.m. By the time the ambulance arrived and took Michael to UCLA Medical Center, it was too late. Doctors tried for over an hour to revive him. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Jackson was pronounced dead. He was 50 years old. His children's hospital was never built. The This Is It concerts never happened. The money he planned to use for the hospital was never earned. The dream died with him. In November 2011, after a 6-week trial that captivated the world, Dr. Conrad Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The jury determined that Murray's gross negligence and reckless use of propofol directly caused Michael Jackson's death. The judge called Murray a disgrace to the medical profession and sentenced him to 4 years in prison. Murray served 2 years and was released in 2013. He never showed remorse for his role in Michael's death. In interviews after his release, he continued to blame Michael for his own demise, claiming the singer was addicted to propofol and would have found another way to get it. But that secret recording tells a different story. It shows a man who wasn't trying to get high or escape reality. It shows a man with chronic insomnia who desperately needed rest so he could complete his mission, to earn enough money to build the greatest children's hospital the world had ever seen. The plans for Michael Jackson's Children's Hospital were found in his bedroom after his death, along with notes in his handwriting about the specific features he wanted to include. There were detailed drawings of the movie theaters, complete with comfortable recliners, where children could watch films while receiving treatment. Sketches of game rooms with the latest technology, designed to help kids forget their pain through play. But the most heartbreaking discovery was a folder labeled Letters from My Angels. Hundreds of letters from sick children around the world who had written to Michael over the years. Children with cancer, children with rare diseases, children who were alone and scared and found comfort in Michael's music. One letter from a 9-year-old girl named Sarah battling leukemia read, "Dear Michael, when I listen to Heal the World, I feel better. I know you understand what it's like to hurt. Please don't give up on us kids. We need you." Michael had kept every single letter. He had responded to many of them personally, often including signed photographs, and sometimes even arranging for children to visit him at Neverland Ranch. After Michael's death, his children, Paris, Prince, and Blanket, inherited his estate. They were 11, 12, and 7 years old when their father died. They were too young to understand the full scope of his charitable dreams, but they weren't too young to understand his love for children who were suffering. Paris Jackson, now an adult, has spoken publicly about continuing her father's charitable work. She's visited children's hospitals around the world, often bringing musicians and artists to perform for sick kids. She said that she feels her father's presence most strongly when she's helping others. The Heal the World Foundation, which Michael established in 1992, continues to support children's causes around the world. Every year on the anniversary of Michael's death, fans organize donations to children's hospitals in his name. Since 2009, an estimated $50 million has been donated to pediatric medical facilities worldwide as part of these grassroots efforts. Michael Jackson's Children's Hospital was never built, but children's hospitals around the world have been improved, expanded, and supported because of Michael Jackson's influence and the donations made in his memory. That recording from May 10th raises questions that have never been fully answered. Why was Murray recording Michael in that condition? What was he planning to do with that recording? And if Murray knew Michael was struggling this badly 6 weeks before his death, why didn't he seek proper medical help for his patient? Some believe Murray was documenting Michael's condition to protect himself legally, creating evidence that Michael was responsible for his own death. Others believe he was simply a negligent doctor who was in over his head, more concerned with his substantial salary than his patient's well-being. Michael's daughter Paris has stated publicly that she believes her father was murdered. While no evidence has ever supported this claim in any legal proceeding, it speaks to the lingering questions and pain that Michael's family still carries. But going back to that recording, there's one phrase that stands out above all others. When Michael said, "I hurt," you know I hurt. What was he talking about? Physical pain from old injuries sustained during decades of performing? The emotional pain of his stolen childhood? The weight of expectations from millions of fans? The loneliness of being the most famous person on earth while feeling misunderstood by almost everyone? Probably all of it. Michael Jackson had been performing since he was 5 years old. He'd been the family breadwinner as a child. He'd been controlled and manipulated by his father, Joe Jackson, who used physical violence to ensure perfection. He'd been mocked by the media for his changing appearance. He'd been accused of crimes he was acquitted of, but never fully cleared of in the public eye. Despite all his success, all his wealth, all his fame, Michael Jackson hurt. And the only thing that seemed to ease that pain was helping children who hurt too. That recording ends with Michael saying that his hospital will be remembered more than my performances. He was wrong about that. Most people remember Michael Jackson for Thriller, for the moonwalk, for his groundbreaking music videos, for his incredible performances, the charitable work, the hospital visits, the millions donated anonymously. Those stories are often footnotes in his biography. But maybe that's changing. Maybe stories like this one help shift the narrative toward the truth about who Michael Jackson really was. Because the truth is, Michael Jackson's greatest performance wasn't on any stage. It was in hospital rooms, in quiet moments when he sat with dying children and made them feel seen, valued, and loved. It was in the thousands of lives he touched, the millions he donated, and the dream he carried with him until his last breath. 6 weeks before Michael Jackson died, drugged and barely coherent, he was still thinking about saving children. He was still dreaming about making the world better. He was still hurting for those who hurt. What does that say about who he really was? Not the tabloid version, not the controversial figure, but the human being behind the fame? That secret recording, played in a courtroom 2 years after his death, was never meant to be heard by the world. But maybe it needed to be. Maybe we needed to hear Michael Jackson at his most vulnerable, stripped of all pretense, revealing what really mattered to him. I hurt. You know I hurt. Those words, spoken in darkness 6 weeks before death, echo across the years not as a cry of despair, but as a call to action. Because if someone with everything could still hurt for those with nothing, what's our excuse? Michael Jackson's hospital was never built, but his legacy of compassion lives on in every children's hospital that bears improvements made in his name, in every charity that was inspired by his example, and in every person who heard his story and decided to help a child who's hurting. If this story moved you, share it. Let people know about the Michael Jackson they never saw. The man who hurt, but who turned that hurt into healing for others. And if you can, donate to a children's hospital in Michael's name. Make his dream, the dream that never came true, a little more real, because that will be remembered more than any performance. That will be the legacy that truly lasts.